Go ahead.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So today's topic is about how you can build AI application on your MySQL database. Maybe to start with, can you maybe tell me if you already tried to build an AI application on database? Did you connect your MySQL database to an LLM? Maybe a show of hands. Anyone? You did? You did? Okay, not a lot of you. But right now, I feel that more and more people are using LLMs. Like, I feel that maybe when you are developers, right? I am a developer, I'm using LLMs to code. Maybe, are you? Are you using them? Are you? Show of hand? Okay, good majority. So, in terms of database, we can see that Postgre and MySQL are more or less sharing the crown now. In terms of programming, we can see that for Python is very good, almost the first language to be used. SQL is right there. 50% of the developers are using SQL. It's pretty stable. Okay, we don't see it, but it is stable. And we can see an increase in terms of usage of Rust and TypeScript. Right now we cannot see it. All right. As in this room, a majority of developers are using AI to code. Most of them are using ChatGPT or some coding LLM for within the IDE itself. And when we ask developers what are they using the LLM for, most of them are saying that they're using it for.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. So most of them are saying that they're using the LLM to help them code and to kind of increase their productivity for like tasks that are kind of repeating. But the difficulty is when you try to perform actions and connect your LLM to the data. That's what we are seeing from this poll. So in the previous talk, we have seen the uses of MCP server. And why people are talking about MCP server is MCP is a protocol. It's a one protocol to unify the relationship between the LLMs and your application. When I say application, it can be quite different. It can be a database. It can be another LLM. It can be your email box. So basically, the MCP is kind of the protocol that allows the LLM to discover the words and get more context about your specific task. If we look into the architecture of the MCP, it has one application that is handling several clients, several MCP clients. Each client is connected to a certain source of data, for example, database. And within the database, you have to have what we call an MCP server. The MCP server is the one communicating between the MCP client and the data source itself. Basically, if you want to summarize MCP into one slide, I think you should take this one. You have three main parts in MCP. So we have seen the protocol itself, but you have what we call tools. Tools are the eyes and the way for the LLM to execute and coordinate its action with the word. So basically, it's executable functions. You have what we call resources. Resources are the result of the tools. So the LLM will decide to use a certain tool, and it will get as answer from the tool a resource. And finally, you have the prompt. The prompt basically are what we call the system prompt, but also few-shot learning prompts that explaining to the LLM how to use the tool. I'm going to show an example here. So we have a GitHub open source MCP server. You can directly connect your MySQL database using that server. I put the URL here for the GitHub link. But I also give an example here. So if you open the repo, you will find several Python files. And this is an example of a tool. It's very easy to add tools to this repo because it's just one Python file. And I give here the example of the tool called Execute SQL tool. So what this tool is about is saying to the LLM, if you want to interact with the database, you have to use me. So to create a tool, what you need to do is have some argument in the input, but most importantly, what you need to do is have a prompt explaining to the LLM what the tool is for and how to use it. So it's just a docstring at the end of the day, but this prompt will be ingested by the LLM when it tries to find a way to execute the tool. Once it understands that it wants to use this tool, what it will do is this tool will create a connection with the database and execute the SQL query passed by the LLM itself. I'm going to show you an example. So I have this simple demo where I try to build a travel agent. So I have my LLM right here. The LLM is kind of the brain of the agent. And the agent is connected to two different external tools. You have this MCP server that allows you to list the flights that are available live, and you have another database for making reservations. For the database itself, what we have is a typical database for booking, for example. It has these tables in the database to list the hotels, the room types, the bookings that are made, and to have a new booking, you have to fill this table, for example, and to check the availability of the room, you have to check this table. We also created some util functions for the LLM to make some reservation, for example, or to allow it to search some hotels and to delete some reservation. So this is our database. Now, I have connected my LLM. So my LLM is a simple Claude LLM. So if you open claude.com, you have this UI here. And I've connected, using the GitHub that I shared with you, I have connected my LLM to my database. It took me 5 minutes to do that. Just point your Claude desktop to your tools in your laptop. And then I start asking some questions to the LLM. I started by asking him to list all the hotels in the booking database. It understood that it needs to use the SQL tool to query the database and return these results. So these results are being the result of calling the SQL tool, get some answer from the database, and then get an answer from the LLM based on the tool it used. And then I asked him, I have a new customer, I want to make this reservation, can you please help me? It understood that it needs to book a room, it executes a SQL tool to understand which table to use, and then it executes another SQL tool to make the reservation. So on the fly, it understood which table to use and made the reservation and made the change to the table itself. Basically, a new DBA, but more faster. I went a bit more. I asked it, actually, I want to change my reservation. Can you help? Same thing. It discovered which table to use and then make the SQL call to make the change. And then I asked him, actually, now I want to see the flights. So in that, I want to see if it understands which tool to use. It did, right? Because each tool has its own system prompt that explains, you know, you want to make the change to a reservation, you should use the database. You want to check the flights, you should use this other tool. And it called another tool called search flight offers and kind of returned to me what are the flights that are available. So this is as easy as that. You define your tools, you connect your MCP server to your LLM, and then you can just query it. Another topic in data interaction for data science and for database in general is the visualization. And here I want to go into more details about a new feature we added recently for Enterprise Edition. It's called MySQL Studio. So MySQL Studio is a UI, user interface, to connect to your database. It has chat available, and it has also visualization of queries. You can, because as a data scientist, for example, you are using SQL to query your database, but more importantly, you are using other other programming languages such as Python, and you want to interact with your data. And MySQL Studio kind of unified this by allowing you to use LLMs to chat and understand, ask some questions. It has a Jupyter Notebook interface to run your Python code and interact with the database directly. And it has Query Explorer to use SQL directly. Here is an example of how to use, for example, LLM within this MySQL Studio. And I'll show you a demo a bit after. Yeah, so MySQL Studio is lowering the barrier because DBA and data scientists, they have different needs. And what we try to do is unify these needs into one interface. Here's an example. So here we have the SQL Explorer. What it allows you to do is write your own query, run it directly on the fly, and get your results visually. So it's pretty intuitive and can be quite useful for data science projects. I talked about the AI chat. So in the cloud version, we have LLMs that are available because we are integrated with other OCI services. But on the, for example, on-prem, what we allow to do with MySQL AI is to use local LLMs. Here we have an example. I think the LLM that we use is the Grok 4. And we can ask within the same UI that we use for SQL query, we can also chat within the LLM. And we can ask it some question. For example, here it was a question about, okay, what is MySQL heatwave? And it gives you kind of a connector to connect your DB system. What I like the most about MySQL Studio, because I'm coming from data science background and I code a lot in Python, is the Jupyter Notebook experience. Because before, what I used to do is have on my local computer Anaconda environment, I used to use Python notebooks to connect to my DB. And it was annoying because I had to use MySQL shell, Jupyter notebooks in a different environment. But now, with MySQL Studio, you can basically create your own notebook, connect your database, have your app directly within MySQL Studio. And you can prompt and use Python, or you can use SQL. Finally, I wanted to talk a bit about MySQL AI. So MySQL AI is just integrated within the MySQL Enterprise Edition. And what we try to do is I add this block here of what we call AI engine, AI capabilities for the MySQL. We have it in the MySQL Cloud Edition, but we wanted to dip a bit more into the MySQL on-prem. So we added this entire fleet of features for AI problems. So we have generative AI capabilities with local LLMs. We have some ML models. We have, most importantly, the vector store. Vector store is a concept that allows you to ingest documents into your database and convert the document into vectors. I'll give you some example afterwards. And all of these features are now available for MySQL on-prem. This is an example that shows you how the vector store usually works. Before on the cloud, we had here, instead of having the file system, we had buckets where you store your data, documents. But now, because you're on-prem, you want the files to be connected to your file system. And by just dragging your files into the database, you can use them for your application. And the idea of vector store is to convert your files, to parse your files, convert them into segments, and each segment will be embedded, so that allows you to build your applications with vectors. Right, so I was talking about vectors. Yesterday we announced that the vectors distance will be available in the community edition, because vectors are really, really important for Gen AI applications. Basically, the vectors allows you to retrieve important context for your LLM. By embedding your text into vectors, you do this vector similarity search, as shown here, and by converting all your text, all your documents into vector, you allow your LLM to find useful context based on the query of the user. So you have your query user, you convert this into an embedding, for example here, esteemed scientist, and then because you have your entire context that is also embedded, you're able to do similarity search and find important context from your documents that allows the LLM to answer to your question. So the distance will be now available in the community, which allows you to build more AI applications. Here's an example. You create a table for your context, for example, here the context is Wikipedia, you have your vector column, and then to do similarity search query, you will order you have your query embedding here, and you will order your distance by the similarity search using the distance function. I just gave an example here of what we do on the cloud. We have your applications here in this block. We have the heatwave cluster that is processing all the analytics queries. And we are connected to the OCI services for object storage. Object storage is where we store your documents. And we are also fully integrated with the OCI GenAI service, which allows us to have all the LLMs from the cloud. So we have OpenAI, Meta, and Cohere, all those. All of this into one application. I talked about vector store. One important thing that I want to mention about vector store is that it's important to be scalable because you have a lot of documents, right? So just to go through the pipeline a bit, you first need to parse a document. If you have a PDF, for example, you need to extract all the text from your document. You need to segment the documents. Segmentation allows you to parse from the PDF into the text. And most importantly, you need to encode your text into a vector. And yet, at the end of the day, you have this table of all the segments of your documents converted into an embedding. And this embedding will be the source of context for your LLM afterwards. Okay, I have, I think, some time for a demo. We have 5 minutes. So I choose maybe to show you MySQL Studio because I found it pretty cool. So this is the UI that you have. Oh, okay, it's not there. Okay, this is the UI for MySQL Studio. We are right now in the SQL Explorer. You can run your SQL queries, get the results. Here, I think the user is creating a table and inserting some rows to it. You have here all the schemas of your database. And it will go and explore one table here. So this is the sales table that it just created here. So it's directly, you can find it directly here. I think at one point the user will try to visualize its data. Let's see. So here the query results will allow you to visualize the data, but here you just created a table and insert some records, so you don't have visualization of the data. But if you try to select the data, then it will show a bit. Maybe we can jump a bit in the video. Okay. Here, for example, it is showing the results of the query. It selected the sales result of your data. Another query here where it's selected some table. And you can, what is pretty nice is you can visualize directly from the Query Explorer all your data into like a graph. And I found it pretty useful because what I had to do before was get the results, transform it into a data frame, and then visualize this data frame. But having this built in within the UI, I found it very, very useful. You can also do some admin, DBA work directly within the UI. Okay, so here it shows an example of the chat. It has loaded some documents in the previous using the vector store built-in function that we have. So you just have to drag a document. This will create a document, create a vector store. You can see here the vector store is running. It's converting the document into a vector store table with embeddings on the backend, and then you can directly chat with the LLM. And the LLM will automatically go into your database, check all the vectors of vector store that are available, and try to find the most useful context to answer your query. So here, for example, tell me about the Oracle financial results, and because we have ingested the financial results before, it has all the information to answer the question. Here, you see, we have the document right there in the text. We have ingested the document into a vector store, provided all the context for the LLM to answer your question. Right. So really giving the right context to your LLM is super important, especially when you have private documents that public LLMs are not aware of. Finally, some Python notebook that I talked about. So you can just have your data science work directly within your MySQL Studio. You can interact directly with your database, have some Python code that is running some code to create some data or read data. Here it has an application for classifying penguins. So it's created using the AutoML capabilities within your database and using some data to classify these penguins, and then you can show directly the results of the classifier directly within your MySQL Studio. Awesome. So with that, we finish the demo. Do you have any question? Yes.
So how much of this will then come into the community edition?
So I don't know. So it just got G8, it just got released. We are right now in the MySQL Enterprise Edition, but I don't know when it will arrive in the community.
And running in the Enterprise Edition, what kind of LLMs and so on for running locally would be included in that?
Right. So I think in the release, we tried to make it very general in the sense that you can just load a certain format, which is called GGUF. It's using Llama CPP, and using that you can run basically any models that the memory that you have are allowed. But it's very general. Like, we are not limiting the models that you can run.
And do you need to run that through like Llama or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. But it's built in within the server, so you don't have to run it yourself. It's within the plugin itself. Okay. Any more questions?